Welcome to the Planner Pals podcast, a podcast hosted by two true Planner Pals. I'm Jess or Jessie Corinne.
And my name is Mark, and I go by Mark Your Pages. And we're back for another great episode today, talking about a topic that I don't know, it's not like a sad topic necessarily, but it can feel that way sometimes, both for you and your planner. Because today we are talking about the planner slump. And this is right about the time, Jess, where I feel like we're all feeling it. We were talking before we got started today. We're like completely separate from the topic itself. Like something just doesn't feel right. Is it the planner? Is it the life? Is the life affecting the planner? And so today we're going to talk about what is the planner slump if you haven't experienced this just yet. And if you have experienced it, we're going to share some of our own experiences and maybe even some solutions or just blab on forever about where we are and hope that you can help answer our questions.
Yeah, this is one of those like write in column kind of pieces where you kind of write into the author and be like, this is all of the issues in my life, please solve them. That was definitely what it was like before we started filming.
I mean, honestly, isn't the planner supposed to be like, now I need you to fix my life? Like, I bought you, now fix it all. And we expect it to kind of do that for us. And in many ways, it does. But if you're like me, or honestly, like a lot of other planner pals, we know that this happens. We get so excited about the planner that we chose at the end of last year. We start using it, we set it up, and now we're a few months into it. And it might be time to figure out if there's kinks to work out, or honestly, to see if maybe it's just not the right planner for us. And that's like the really hard decision where we're like, well, I paid money for this.
Yeah, exactly. I think that, the time spent with it, the effort spent with it, the money spent with it really does factor into any kind of decision making process around like, do we just stick it through? Do we just keep going with it? Do we switch it out or anything like that? That is the sunk cost fallacy at work. And I do try to avoid that, but it still gets me because, in previous planner slumps that I've had where I get a couple months into it and I sit there thinking like, oh, oh no, this isn't the vibe anymore. I'm just like, oh well, we can probably do a couple more months in it. Like you can probably write out to the end of the notebook. But what are you sacrificing by doing that? Like, the productivity sacrificed, the joy sacrificed. These are all also parts that should be going into the decision making process outside of just, I spent money on it. But very rarely is that the case. Oftentimes it's more so the kind of like loud voice is like, think of all of the effort you already spent on this. Think of all the time you spent with this already.
It is definitely a difficult thing to kind of work through inside of our head. So let's work through it together. We will all hold hands. We're all in a safe space as we talk about this kind of space where we are. I mean, honestly, I think the best place to maybe start will be talking about our slump history. I just hit my 9-year Bujo anniversary. So it's been 9 years since I officially started bullet journaling and planning and kind of morphed through there. So I've had, and I think you're in the same exact boat, right? 9 years as well for you.
Yeah, I think that in November, start of November this year, it'll be my 10-year anniversary. I feel like I'm going to have to do something special for it.
You're like, yeah, but not celebrate bullet journal itself because, baby, I moved away from you. We have departed. We are divorced. I don't know if we're coming back.
Yeah, that's right. I think that, like, people have divorce cakes, right? That could be a thing. I'm not going to say that I'm going to celebrate with a cake, but now I'm feeling like it could be part of the party.
It definitely could be. Well, I mean, I can go and share just a little bit of mine. I've definitely hit a number of planner slumps throughout time inside of mine. I remember my very first one many eons ago was when I was bullet journaling and just starting. And I remember getting probably 6 months into the bullet journal. And just to give a little bit of background, if you haven't listened to like one of our very first episodes, which I actually think talked about how we got into bullet journaling itself, I practiced in a fake, kind of like a faux bullet journal. I just really took some pieces of paper and stapled them together to be like, okay, how do I figure out the signifiers and how these bits and pieces work? But when I finally like got into it, I was all in. It's the only thing I talked about. Oh my gosh, it was the only thing I would ever talk to anybody about. And I just remember like 6 months in, and I was kind of in this moment. I think it actually came right after a long vacation. And I came back to work and I used my bullet journal almost primarily for work. So it made sense to kind of take that break. And I came back and I was almost like, is it worth it? Do I need this? And I remember being like, you know what? Like maybe I don't, right? Maybe I don't need this and I can just make things happen. And I actually gave it a week because I was like, I don't know, Mark, like giving it all up. Let's see what happens. And it was so terrible. Like I felt my life was falling apart. I was forgetting things again. Like projects weren't getting done on time. Like I wasn't getting back to people. And I was like, no, 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 no. We need to bring this back. And I brought it back into my life and I've been relatively happy, with it. But I just feel like a lot of it kind of comes and goes. I can definitely say like the one that followed up from that one was probably when I got into more of the decorative bullet journal planning, where I started to add more color, more doodles, more stamps, and things like that. And I think after you're kind of in it a lot, you've probably been here too, and others have done it too. You kind of get a little sick and tired of like doing all the stuff for your bullet journal. But I think it's also like that moment for me when I start like questioning whether like I'm working for my bullet journal or if my bullet journal is working for me. And that I think is like a big conflict area that gets me sometimes.
Yeah, definitely. I think that some of my previous slumps have definitely been around that kind of decorative element and almost like a kind of creative burnout with your journal, or if you've kind of been going through the motions doing the same thing over and over again, which in a way can be nice because the routine of it can make it something that's easier to stick with, easier to keep up with or whatnot. But if that routine is so time and labor and, I don't know, resource intensive, then that can also come with like a cost. I found for me, one of my first kind of major planner slumps was around that decoration and feeling like I almost had to do it, which wasn't the case. I know that that's not the case. Rational Jess knows that's not the case. But subconscious Jess is like, are you even doing it right if you're not decorating it? Again, she knows it's not the case, but still, this was part of the narrative for me. And I was also at the time already sharing things online around my plan, around how I did it and such. So there was also this kind of element of me putting other people's expectations ahead of my own personal needs for my planner, but also putting their expectations into their mouths for them. It's kind of like, speaking for somebody else. Nobody had actually told me, if you stop decorating your planner, I'm not going to watch your videos anymore. But I had kind of, I don't know, established that narrative in my head, which meant that that was a very kind of large part of my decision making as to, like, how long I stuck with decorative planning or how long I was doing that particular style of decoration. Because one of the things that was very much in the decision making process for me when I started my channel was the idea of, I want anybody to be able to do what I'm doing in my planner. Thus, I will use supplies that everybody has accessible, like, to them. They can actually get these things. So for the most part, it was like a pen, markers, those kind of things. There wasn't any tape or stickers or anything like that because I didn't want people to need very specific supplies in order to recreate things if they wanted to. Whereas when I eventually changed and started using stickers and washi tapes and whatnot, people were like, oh, wow, I really love that I can do this too now because I can't draw, or like, don't have the same level of drawing ability that you were demonstrating in your videos. So it really kind of highlights the number of times where I hold off on making a choice because I'm making assumptions that aren't necessarily true. Like in this case, it was, building that narrative around, oh, people won't be able to do XYZ or people want XYZ or whatnot. First of all, it was my planner. I shouldn't even be thinking about that, but it is still part of the thing. So, it kind of makes me question for future slumps and like current slumps, possibly, how much of the decision making process is you just kind of like building up stories in your head or telling yourself kind of lies almost. That's probably where some of my slumps have definitely come from.
I mean, they definitely happen with the burnout part of it. And I think there's probably definitely a difference between burnout and the slump, but sometimes the slump is kind of triggered by the burnout, or I don't know which one kind of feeds the other one. I mean, over the years, we've seen a lot of people who have burnt out on the content creation part of journaling, or a topic that I'm interested for us to talk about in the future is this idea of like, do you outgrow a journal or outgrow a planner, right? Maybe you used it for a time in your life or a season in your life, and you're beyond that now, and you may or may not really need that. And I think that's the really hard thing for maybe some people to realize, and they hold on for longer and longer pieces because, kind of to your point, from the creator standpoint, you have an audience. People expect those things from you, or they like to see them from you. And you are like, okay, well, now I'm just feeding this monster, but like I'm not in it. My heart's not in it anymore. Like I don't actually need this thing. So I'm just going to keep doing it. And I think there's a part of that that like leads to that burnout and like I'm giving it up. But the slump part of it, though, I think is a little bit different. And again, if you're not a content creator, you're not making videos or posting online, the slump is still a very real thing. Like I currently am kind of not really, I'm kind of in a slump, but I think I'm also just kind of like bored right now with myself a little bit, right? Where I'm just like, am I really using this to my fullest ability? But that's completely regardless of what video I'm making. Like I feel like now like my audience knows like they're on a ride with me for like a certain amount of time. Whatever the hyper focused moment is for me right now, things are going to change. But like the bullet journal has always stayed. But like right now I'm kind of in this like size slump, I guess is the best way to kind of call it. I'm using my B5. I used that last year and I really liked it. What I'm noticing right now, for instance, is that my daily day-to-day work is kind of changing where I don't know that I need that size. But I bought this hemlock and oak. I set it up. I like this notebook. It's not doing anything bad for me necessarily, but I'm just kind of like, ooh, but like I have this new trifold that I can put an A5 inside of, and like I'm really excited about that. And so I'm just like creating my spreads now, and not that I'm half-assing it, but like I'm not whole-assing it. I'm not going above and beyond for it. Now I'm like a few stamps, a few days of the week, I'm good because that's all I kind of need right now. So I think there's also just like I'm not burnt out from a journal or posting or doing anything. It's just like I'm kind of just not currently motivated or currently inspired by my current situation.
Yeah, I think that boredom can definitely be a kind of reason behind getting into a planner slump. So, burnout can be a reason, boredom can be a reason, the materials that we're using can definitely be a reason. So, like, you've said you do like your notebook that you're using, it's just maybe the size isn't quite right for you right now, especially like when life changes happen, whether it's for work or personal life or something new that you need to plan for or want to plan for, and your current system doesn't really accommodate that. That can also lead to slump energy because now the planner that was working so well for you isn't because you've got this new set of needs that you have. I know for me, in terms of like the supply specifically, another slump kind of period was when I was transitioning over from the LT 1917 into what was then the Scribbles That Matter for me. So just having that thicker paperweight because I was getting into slump energy around my layouts because I was so sick and tired of the ghosting and the bleeding because it didn't lend itself nicely to the style of planning I was doing. So that was kind of like a slump period as well, specifically kind of tied to the fact that the supplies I was using weren't fit for the purpose that I was giving my planner at the time.
Yeah. Side note, is Scrolls That Matter still around? I have not heard that planner brand in so long.
I think they are. I think they just go by STM now, but I don't really see them around as much.
Yeah, I remember there was a real big time when like that was like the next journal to have. Was that pre Archer and Olive?
It was for me, at least.
I mean, I know that they had like the thicker paper. I remember being like early on, I was like, who needs that? And I think I mentioned this before. Like when I spent $17 on my first LT 1917, I was like, why am I spending this much money? And then the Scribbles That Matter were a lot more, almost double the price. And I was like, I don't understand how people could spend this much money on a notebook. Now I do know why, because the qualities of the things. But yeah, sorry, I just haven't heard that name in a while, and I was like, oh, are they around?
No, it's all good. I mean, what previous notebook brands that I've used, I started LT 1917, like, officially. We're not thinking about pre planners, like, the school diary or anything like that. But then it was STM, Scribbles That Matter. Then it was Dingbats. And then since then, it's just been like exclusively Archer and Olive for all of my everyday journals with some Tifosi chucked in for R&D notebooks and other things like that. So it's interesting to think about, when slumps occurred and what kind of things I did to get out of them. Obviously, we're not going to talk about that just yet. We're still talking about the slump itself. We got to establish the base cases here. But I'd be very curious to like map a timeline of when I transitioned to new notebooks, what notebooks they were, and where my slumps were, and see if there's any kind of like correlation between them.
I'm sure that there is. I mean, I think a real big thing that happens with slumps too is just when the planner or the idea or the method just isn't working for you. I mean, how many people probably pick up bullet journaling because they saw it talked about in some way, shape, or form? You put the time, the energy, the effort, like you said, into it. You understand how to do said method, and then you get kind of 2 or 3 months in, which I believe personally is a good amount of time to give something a good try, and it's just not working for you. It's kind of what I was was saying before, like, are you working for your bullet journal or is your bullet journal working for you? Because when the bullet journal is working for me, oh, I feel good. I'm moving, I'm grooving, I'm having a good time. I know where things are, they're happening. But like when I've used other planners or methods that are not that, I'm just like, well, wait, where does this go? Oh, do I put it on here? Or where does, and then you kind of get yourself like overrun. I mean, I got like that when I remember, gosh, what was a few years ago, I had an A5 size bullet journal, and then I had a dated planner, and this was the data planner from Appointed because I really, really liked the format of it and like how the Appointed one was kind of organized, but the paper did not fit my needs. So I had two different pens that I wrote with. I wrote one that was safe for that planner, and then I had like my fountain pens or other pens I used in my bullet journal. And I got a few months in and I was like, I can't do this anymore. Like it's pointless for me to like have a pen to put things over in this planner and then in my bullet journal. It was just too much. And I was just like, I'm over this. And I just consolidated back to the bullet journal. And then now I've kind of moved beyond that to say, okay, well, now incorporate like a calendar into your bullet journal future log. Like that was my evolution. But I was just like, I got to the point where I was in that slump and I was like, this just isn't working for me anymore because it's just too much. And then, you kind of make a decision from there. And I think that's a really important part. And we'll get into that in just a moment about like diagnosing your slump. But is that realization part for you to feel like it's okay to make a change, even though you've put, like we've mentioned, the time, money, effort, and all of those things into it. It's just like sometimes it's just so hard to just bring yourself to make that decision because you feel like you're failing because you set this thing up and you were so like gung ho on it. But I think the bigger part is like realizing that it's an evolution of where you're going, but you have to kind of do a few things, which, like I said, we'll talk about on how to kind of get through that, identify, and then move on.
Yeah, I think that, this idea of splitting plans out or like having multiple or whatnot, that can also definitely be a kind of recipe for slump energy. Because a previous instance that I've had is when I was, entering the new teacher year and I was really interested in the idea of this work life separation because I was finding I did not have work life balance. I was constantly working. I found it really hard to leave work at work. Like, if you're a teacher, that's the case. But I found that because that was such a problem for me, the solution that I thought was going to help me was having a separate teacher planner where I put all of my teacher planning related stuff in there, and then any other kind of planning I needed to do would go into my bullet journal. But what I found is that that gave me like huge, huge slump energy because I didn't have my planners on me all the time like I usually would because I wanted to keep my teacher planner at work because I wanted that separation. But oftentimes, when I had a thought about teacher planner related stuff, it might not necessarily be on my person with me. If I was at home, it definitely wasn't with me. And then the only things that were left in my regular personal bullet journal kind of space were chores. I'm like, well, that's super inspiring. Absolutely love that. So it was just like the kind of places I was putting the information, it was still the same information, but because I had split it out, that set me into a planner slump. So that was kind of a challenge point. Definitely did not happen though, but this also happened in 2020. And we all know what happened in 2020. So, just because we're feeling like slump energy in our planner doesn't necessarily mean it's something that we have specifically done or, something that is a fault of our own. First of all, probably isn't your fault. I'm going to blame the planner. It's its fault. Look at it. But secondly, it could just be life in general. Like there are things external to our planners, external to us working in our planners that will have a really big impact or influence on our mindset when we're coming in to work with our planners as well.
It's a really good point. I think depending where you are, what's going on, there's sometimes just bigger things than filling out your bullet journal, that are just happening. And it's really not the time for it. I mean, I kind of think almost to, like we said, the seasons of planning as well is like maybe you're just beyond that. It's not working out for you and trying to figure it out. One thing I wanted to ask you, Jess, around this, and again, we're pondering on this, but like, why do you think these planner slumps tend to happen a lot of the time at like this mid-year mark? Like what do you think it is exactly that's causing us to really rethink how we're taking on planning, journaling, anything like that.
I think that by the time we get to mid-year, especially if you're using like a year-long planner or something like that, it can be this kind of combination of a loss of motivation and just boredom. Like the monotony of doing the same old can sometimes really start to get to us. And even if you're not, depending on where you're based, sometimes it'll be a seasonal thing. I personally don't like hot weather. Hot weather is not for me. So in summertime, I'm just like, I'm gonna be like, what's the reverse of a lizard? I wanna be a reverse lizard. I'm gonna stay as far away from the sun as possible. But also, where I'm actually based, this is the time when we have our darkest days, coldest weather, everything is rainy. So it's like, there could be that kind of an impact happening as well. If we're thinking about people who are in a place where the weather is a little nicer and they are the kind of person who does get out and do things and such, maybe you just don't have as much time to dedicate to working in your planner. It could be a range of things. I think for me personally, it's usually the boredom factor. Started the year with like really kind of good intentions, motivation, excited energy, like, yeah, this is the year I'm going to get my life together or whatever. I feel like I'm constantly trying to get my life together. But anyway, and then we get to the mid year point, I'm just like, but like, is it my year? Is it though? What do you reckon?
No, I think you're exactly right. And depending on how you use your planner and where you use it, I mean, for myself, if you use your planner or your bullet journal for work, a lot of the times it's all the big ideas, the big things we're planning for the year, the big projects, the roadmaps, all those things. And right about this time, honestly, earlier than this, probably in like more around like the March time frame, that end of the first quarter, so many of those plans have gone out the window. Right. And all of those roadmaps are now completely blown to bits. All of that early is my journal going to fix my life excitement is starting to kind of go along with the shrapnel of things being blown apart. Even the seasonal part, like you just talked about, makes a lot of sense. I've never really connected it to that. But that makes a lot of sense too, especially if like you're affected by like what is it, the seasonal affective disorder, is that what it's called? So if it's like seasonal depression or things like that, that really does play a really big part in it, when you just don't want to open your notebook, or like you're just not really feeling it. I think, being able to identify a lot of that the same way you would with any type of like depression or things like that, it's like a really important part of it. Whether, a lot of the times, especially with like ADHD, like I'm starting to realize a lot of my impulsivity, and I'm like stopping myself. I'm actively currently trying to do this with a lot of things, where previously I'd be just very impulsive, buy it, do it, kind of make it happen. And I feel like that is how I get myself into these places too. Like my trifold that I bought, like this was, it was impulsive buy. I didn't need this, but I got it and I wanted it and I love it so much. Jenny Bick is where I got this one. It's so much fun. But like this is ready for me to do. I've got my, little stamp journals in here. I've got my ink journal in here. All I need now is an A5 bullet journal to complete this little baby and get it all together. But like that was an impulsive buy, which then led me to the excitement around it, which then I come home and I like look at my B5 and I was like, I don't like you as much anymore because I'm excited about this over here. But it is very much about, that's how I am with like materials and things like that too, because I think my solution to the boredom is to buy new thing to excite me about it. Like, buy new pens or new stickers or new stamps, go on a journal say haul for myself and then come back with, $150 worth of new cool things to play with. And sometimes that works. I'll be honest with you. Sometimes that's all that I need to do that. But it really is just kind of like so many life things have happened by this point. You really are kind of second guessing and really thinking about, okay, here's where I am now. It's mid-year point. It's a really good point, I feel like, to take a look at yourself and what's happening currently and say, okay, how am I going to finish out this year? And if your planner is not making you happy, you don't want to spend the next 6 months with that planner. Like that's not going to make you happy, right? Or if something is really working out for you but it needs a few little tweaks, now is a fantastic time to tweak some of those things to set you up for the rest of the year to see how well those things work. So I really do think that's like one of the main areas where you're like, okay, this is mid-year point feels right to me because I've given it a go. I've been using the same thing for, almost 6 months now. So let me go ahead and just set myself up for success for the next 5 to 6 months.
Yeah, because I think that's the thing that when it comes to this mid-year planner slump and whatnot, and throwing baby out with the bathwater and whatever, we still have so much time left in the year to make things happen, get things done, all of that. Because my planner is typically the place where I'm planning things to get done. That's kind of where my mindset goes to. It's like I still have time to get things done, so why slog through with a planner that isn't helping me get things done? What changes can I make? What adjustments? That may not necessarily be like chuck the planner out and get a new one. That's not necessarily the solution here. But I think that before you even start to brainstorm solutions, the biggest thing is figuring out like the causes or the reasons. Like, why is it that you are in a slump specifically? Because as we've just noted, there are plenty of different reasons why you could be in a slump, and different reasons are going to have different solutions for them.
No, absolutely. So let's talk about that a little bit. How have you, or how do you start to diagnose yourself with in a slump? What does that look like for you?
So, typically speaking, I will tackle pretty much anything planner related when I'm starting to think about making changes or not, whatnot, with a want analysis. I love the want analysis. I love how flexible it is. If you haven't heard me talk about it, first of all, you must be new here. Secondly, the want analysis stands for wins, aversions, needs, and to try. And through doing that, through thinking through those categories of things with my planner, I can usually identify, like, okay, well, it's not everything sucks. It's more so these things don't work. What could I do to actually adjust and move like forward with a bit more intention? So in terms of breaking that analysis down, W wins. This is all the stuff that is working. I like to start with the positive because all too easily I will fall into my negativity bias and just be like, everything is awful, everything sucks, this is the worst. So by starting with the stuff that is working, it just kind of has a little bit more of a positive spin on it. And it can be really small things like, oh, I really like how I've been using stickers in this way. I really like how my lettering has looked on these weeklies. I really like the placement of my trackers or something like that. Just the little things, totally fine. Doesn't have to be huge things. For any category, it doesn't have to be huge. But once we've done wins, once we've thought about the positive, then it's the aversions. This is the stuff that is not a win, the stuff that sucks. What specifically is not working? So rather than just saying like the planner doesn't work or like I am in a slump, which like, wow, very helpful. No, 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 no. We're going to get a little more granular with it. Okay. Specifically, what is not working for me? So it could be like, I'm not remembering to come back and check in with my tracker, or I don't feel that the habits and routines I'm keeping track of are actually helping me, or I'm not remembering to open my planner, or I can't easily transport it to work. Like all of those different aversions or different problems are going to have different solutions. So I want to make sure that I'm being very specific and very particular about those so that then when I start to figure out ways forward, they're actually aligned with solving those problems. In terms of N for needs, this is thinking about the stuff that my planner should be hopefully fulfilling for me moving forward. So if we're thinking about a mid-year check-in, it's like, cool, for the next 6 months, what do I have coming up that I'm going to need to plan for? Or what do I kind of hypothesize that will become needs for me? Are there any projects or goals that I'm thinking about working on or tackling or whatnot? And what will I need to put in my planner to accommodate those kind of things? And then for T, try, this is specifically looking at my needs and the aversions and thinking about what I could do to solve for those or accommodate those things. So it's like if one of the aversions is I'm not checking in with my habit tracker, then maybe it's like, okay, is it the planner's fault, or could I just have like an alarm set on my phone at 5 o'clock to say like check in with your tracker? Or if it's like, okay, I have this goal or project that I know is coming up in quarter 4, well, what kind of layouts could I put into my planner to help me plan for those things? It's kind of like an all in one kind of process, but you really just start with the W and the A and really kind of analyze what is and isn't working to start with. And then the other two sections are more so forward thinking. But that's what helps me. What do you do?
Well, first, I heard a new word today that I have to share with you that someone said when you said about like putting something on your calendar to remind you to do something. I was at a meeting today and someone called that a tickler. They're like, oh, I'll put a tickler on my calendar. And I was like, a what? And they were like, oh, it's like a reminder. I just call it a tickler. And now I want to use it because I think it's such a weird, like hilarious word to use. Like, oh, I'm going to jot down a tickler for that one. I was like,
Well, it's certainly one way to word it. That is not what my first thought was. I'm just like, oh, yeah, tickle time with whoever. Like, yeah, put that on my calendar. yeah, each to their own. If it helps them remember, then it's totally fine.
Yeah, we don't kink journal shame here. You do whatever you got to do for yourself. But I think a big thing for me is understanding. So, something I do, I've used the one analysis. I typically do that for new journals, but my mid year looks a little bit different. What I actually do is actually just do an audit of my current process and journal. If I have multiple journals or planners, I'm looking at everything all together. And I'm essentially just taking a trip down memory lane for the past 4 to 5 months or wherever you kind of fall. I start at the very beginning. I take a look at my index. Am I writing things inside of here? How does this make me feel? Right. And go to like my future log most of the time. Like I was just thinking to myself, I was like, I actually don't know the last time I added anything to my future log because I have something different that I'm doing now, like with all of this. And I'm like, okay, am I using this? Am I not? Like, what is it giving me? And then I'll just go through my weeklies. And honestly, sometimes too, I'll be like, oh, I totally forgot to migrate this task. I should probably pick this back up if it's timely. But I'll go through that and just be like, okay, what's working for me? And for myself, a lot of the time I'm paying attention to like how I'm utilizing my weeks. And I'm taking a look and saying, okay, I set up a 2 page spread or, a spread on this page for this week. And I used half of it. I didn't even use that second page. And I'm kind of looking for these trends where I'm saying, oh, you know what? Probably for the past 3 or 4 weeks, I've only really used one side of my journal. So why am I taking all this time to set up a spread and on 2 pages and all these different pieces when in reality, I'm not using my big like weekly areas for a task or whatever. Like I'm realizing for myself, just to give like a real life example, most of my weeklies I set up pretty large areas for like the days of the week, and I usually will typically put tasks or events or appointments inside of there. But recently I've been making them pretty big, and I'm realizing I'm not really utilizing that space all the way, and that could be a reason why I'm making these 2 page spreads, because I think that I need that space but I really don't. So I can shrink it down. Mark, what's more important? Honestly, what's most important is that I know what day of the week and what the date is, because I reference that so much. So it's not really the space, but what I need from it, well, it kind of goes into the want analysis, is the day and the date, and then maybe a handful of things that happen that day, whatever that might look like. And then when I get to the end of that, and I forgot to mention this, have like a scrap piece of paper or a page in your journal, a collection page where you're writing kind of these things down, what's working, what's not working for you. And then you're just going back through that. So it's very similar to the want analysis, but if you're not trying to like fill in a quadrant because you're not quite sure, this works just fine, like a brain dump almost. And then from there, I'm just really kind of looking at it. I'm kind of pulling it up and picking up like again that what's working and what's not working for myself, to then realize and start to diagnose, okay, what is the problem? Is it that I'm closing my notebook at the end of every day and then it's not open when I start my day, therefore I'm not looking at it? Or is it something more along the lines of like, not a lot's going on right now, and so I don't really need all of that kind of space? And I mean, the one thing I like about my bullet journal is that it's so open, because sometimes things are busier and sometimes they're not. So sometimes it's just changing my approach to it. And that's really kind of how I take it on, honestly. And like I said, when I had the bullet journal plus the planner, at this point, I was just like, the duplication's not having it for me. It's totally okay. We're going to retire the planner and just stick to the bullet journal because that's what has always worked for us. So I would kind of make that same decision at this point right now for myself and just say, like, oh, it is definitely too much. So I'm going to condense down to what is working for me. If it's not working for me at all, then I might want to just take a look through. And again, with the bullet journal, it's pretty straightforward. It's like, I'm not using my index. I'm not using my future log. I'm barely using weeklies. I'm not using a monthly overview. I'm not going and filling out my habit tracker. Like maybe this whole thing, and not that the habit tracker is necessarily a part of the bullet journal method, but like the collection page, is whatever it might be. It just might be like, you know what, man, take it back to the basics. And I've done that before too, where I've just completely just put all the extra stationery, pens, stickers, all that away. And I just went back to the basic, straightforward bullet journal method to like reset myself. And sometimes that's been super helpful to be like, yeah, why am I doing this? Like, it's like remembering your why. Like, why did I decide to use this method, this notebook, whatever it might be? I've just gone too far with it and now it's time to rein it back in.
Yeah, I find that the utilization of the want analysis for me is kind of similar to the analysis that you're doing. I used to previously set it up as kind of a quadrant thing. So we had like the WANT, like on quarters on a page or something. But nowadays, what I typically do, because I cannot be trusted to do one section at a time anyways, because I'm just not that way inclined, is that I will set it up using the Alistair method. So I have 4 columns on the side, actually five. So 5 columns on the side of a checklist. So one for WANT, and then one just for like a task bullet kind of a thing. And I'll go and jot down all of my notes about what has been working, what hasn't, like flipping back through the layouts on the planner, thinking about the planner as a whole. Depends on what I'm using the want analysis for. So if it's this kind of like mid-year slump, it would be considering the entire planner and all of the ways that I've been using it and also the layouts in there. So it's like the materials and the practice and the system and all of the other buzzwords, but all of that stuff would end up on the list. And then I just put a dot underneath the relevant column. So it's like, oh, hey, this is a positive, dot underneath W for win. Oh, this is something that kind of sucks or isn't working or isn't getting used, dot underneath A for aversion. Because then if I set it up as a bulleted list, I can go through all of the thoughts that I've had on that list and start to make decisions specifically related to those specific things. So it's like, oh, okay, this was a win. I really liked the fact that the journal was a linen cover or a faux leather or whatever. So it's like, okay, my next one, maybe I want to have another one of those. That's like a decision that I can make to kind of like set myself up in a way that is going to be most joy filling, most like aligned with how I actually like my planner to be and how I like to use it and whatnot. But it's really giving yourself those very specific, actionable things as opposed to just being like, slump energy, everything sucks, wah wah is me kind of a thing. Because unless you're really breaking the problem down, you're not going to have the greatest likelihood of having decisions made that are actually going to help solve your problems.
Yeah, I found some of my worst decisions come from my impulsivity. Where kind of like I said, being very mindful of it right now. It's been very hard for me not just to completely abandon my current journal and just pick up one of the other 55 A5s that I literally have sitting next to me right now and just starting to use it. But I think it really just comes down to like, okay, why am I feeling this way? Like, why am I feeling so impulsive about it? And it's more about the idea, I think, of just having, in this case, because right now, like we just had our last episode about like junk journaling or like things we've fallen into. My junk journaling trend at this point right now is happening inside of here because I was so excited to use it that I just put it inside of here. It made sense. And so I'm like, oh, well, if everything's together, then like I'm just remembering it. It's kind of this big happy family versus what I know doesn't work for me, which is having multiple different planner notebooks and kind of things everywhere. But at the same time, I'm being good from a standpoint of saying like, okay, I've identified why I feel this way. It's not because the planner's not working for me. It's not because the notebook's not working for me. It's none of those things. And I say, okay, Mark, well, let's see how you feel later. So, like, one of the things I'm doing with my impulsivity outside of notebooks and planners is that I've been putting things into my shopping cart, but not clicking buy now, and I don't come back to that if I even come back to it at all. This has been a really important thing where I will like open back up my phone and be like, oh, I forgot that I had 5 things in my cart from Cute Things from Japan. And I'll actually like go back through them and I'll look at them and I'll say, okay, do I really actually need these things right now? Like, do I need another clear stamp set? I do not. I have crates. It's overflowing. I was telling Jess before I got started, I just sold some fountain pens because I have so many fountain pens now that I actually have run out of space to put fountain pens. And so my rule is instead of buying another binder to put more pens, I need to keep within my space that I have. But I have on multiple different sites right now. I have shopping carts that have fountain pens in them that I really, really want, but I don't just need them right now. And so I think for me, it's kind of this idea of, it's like, okay, be impulsive in that moment of like putting them in a cart to kind of fulfill that little dopamine kick that I'm craving, but just kind of give it a day or two and then come back and see if you actually want it afterwards. And so like that's how I kind of feel with these things right now. Is like by the time that I get to the end of the year, am I still going to be excited about this? And if I am, then I'm just, oh, it's gonna be beautiful because it's gonna be like, yeah, let's get back to the A5. Let's go back to like where we started because I've been in squares and B5s for the past few years. Let's give it another go and get excited about it and then see what happens. And then, 6 months later, let's see if I'm still as excited about it after I'm in that A5 or if I'm like, oh, this was a bad decision. I knew it.
Yeah, I definitely am not great at not giving into impulsivity, though mine specifically happens with relation to food, which is not great when you're supposedly on a health journey or whatnot. It's like, you know what I really could go for? Fries. Instantly goes gets fries. Like, no, Jessica, why? Think about the outcomes you're hoping for yourself. But in terms of like planner stuff, I'm very slow to make changes in my planner. I usually slog through things for a really long time, which almost just makes my slump worse because it's like you're really just sitting and dwelling in that like feeling, especially if you're the kind of person like me who if you set up a monthly setup or whatnot and it's not working for you, you're just like, well, it's only a month. I'm like, yeah, but that's like a whole month. It's like a whole like 28 some days depending on what kind of month you're doing, and for me it's 28 days. But I find that the novelty factor and like the shiny object syndrome and such can definitely come into play with a lot of people in terms of their planners, and constantly jumping on new things, so you never really get a feel or appreciation for the kind of like core of what works for you because you're constantly chasing newness. I feel like this is a separate kind of point, but it still felt necessary to say. More importantly, though, once we have identified what the issues are, once we know why we're in a slump, what kind of things have you done to get yourself out of it? Obviously, it's going to be really dependent on the reason, but what kind of things have worked previously for you?
Yeah, so sometimes it's funny when you're talking about like living in your filth a little bit, like this idea of like you made this mess, but you're gonna go ahead and deal with that for X amount of time. I don't know that I could do a month, but I definitely do this with my weeklies where I'm like, ooh, this is ugly. I hate it. It's not working. And I'm like, well, you chose to go this far. You chose to take it. So you're living in this mess and you're not gonna make this mistake again. So like there's a a bit of like that kind of happening in like the mess. So something that I've done to get myself out of a rut is I will sometimes change my approach. So as I said, that one time I said, you know what? I don't like my journal right now. I'm not really using it. I don't think it's right for me. Let's give it a week, right? And I felt the effects of what it was like not having that. So that when I was like, no, 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 I need it back. I don't even think I made it a full week, honestly, probably 3 days. And I was like, my life is falling apart. This was really helping me. And you kind of get back into it. The other thing is going back to the basics, like I mentioned. If you feel like you're overly decorating, you've got too much stuff, too many extras, and you've fallen out with the actual reason and your why, go back to the basics. All of your stuff will still be here. All of your little ADHD stacks you have, they're not going to go anywhere. They weren't going to go anywhere anyway. Let's be realistic. I've got two right now that keep growing almost every single day. But the idea is that all of your stationery stickers, stamps, all of that will be here if you choose to come back. But maybe you choose to bring them back slowly, and kind of take that smaller approach and again really find your why. So for me, those are kind of my two really big things. I would say the third is that, after you've gone through those and it's not working, just giving yourself the permission to make that change. Don't be impulsive about it. We talked about that's not always a good thing to do. But if you're kind of wallowing in this unhappiness and you're trying kind of the least crucial, critical, like decision making things, then you can at least kind of pare out the things that are not the problem and really find the core and the root cause of what it is. And if it happens to be that journal, and I know again, it might be hard to do, especially if you really committed a lot of time, money, and effort into that. Just, sometimes hitting that refresh, hitting that restart is the best thing that you can possibly do. But I usually looked at it as like a last ditch effort because again, I know myself. So I know that starting there is not going to be the right thing to do. So those would kind of be my main ways to get out of it. But how about you, Jess?
Yeah, I think that it so depends on the reason, because one of the ones that you obviously pointed out was, par back decoration. Whereas for me, one of the ways that I previously got out of a slump was leaning more into decoration. And that's because the decorative style that I had started using just wasn't resonating with me. It felt almost performative, but not in a nice way. Like it's not like I was making my journal too decorated and that was kind of, leading me to not plan properly. It was more so the decoration style that I had leaned into was just so uninspiring and I did not like the way it looked that every time I opened up my planner, I'm just like, cool, this fugly thing again. Great. Close that back up. Let's just not do anything today so we don't have to write our plans down. So for me, the thing that got me out of that slump was kind of just taking myself back to something that felt safe, approachable, and enjoyable. And for me, that was actually collaging, which is interesting because I still don't feel like I'm actually that great at collaging. But if I keep it super simple with the collage and use elements that are very matchy matchy and work well together, I can usually make something that just like is peace inducing. It felt cup filling making it. It looked nice when it was put together. It made me love my journal again. So that was very good. But other things that have also helped have, sometimes just been admitting that you need to get rid of your planner. So, what I do in terms of giving myself the opportunity to do that without quite as many bad feelings is that I am now on a quarterly notebook system as opposed to a half year notebook system. And I know there are some people out there who are on a full year notebook system, and I'm like so happy for you that you can do that, but it like could not be me because I just find that I, first of all, fill up the notebooks too fast and I don't like feeling like I have to restrict myself in terms of how much I put in or whatnot. But also, I just love the fact that I have these built in fresh starts in the year. So if I find that my system isn't really working, I know that my fresh start is not too far away. I know that for some people, going to a quarterly system feels like overkill. And especially given that so many notebooks these days have like 160, 192, or sometimes like over 200 pages or whatnot, that might be way too much to fill in a 3 month kind of, system. Understandable, very fair. I'm specifically using my back catalog of notebooks that only have 160 pages now, or going with a B6 or something because that page count's just a little lower. But it does give me that flexibility to change things up, to lean into the novel, and thus sometimes the things that are more exciting and enjoyable and whatnot. Which I guess then my third tip would be do lean into the thing that is exciting you the most and sparking joy, because a lot of my slumps also come from the fact that I am denying myself the ability to lean into the things that feel fun or exciting or I feel more motivated or drawn to in the moment. It's like, no, you have to stick with the thing that you've already started using and set up. And I'm like, why though? Like, why? If you have the ability, whether it be like, time, energy, financial resources, whatever else, to make the change, and the change is going to be more joy filling for longer than just 5 minutes. All right. We're still not trying to give in to impulsivity. Mark's tip stands here, Jessica. But I do find that sometimes to just respark that kind of motivation to use my planner, get me out of that slump, sometimes something completely new within reason can be very helpful.
No, I completely agree with you. Sometimes just the early planning, and I think this kind of leads into our next kind of topic in this, which is like, can you avoid a slump to begin with? And for me, I don't know that you can always avoid it because, like we've talked about so far this episode, like there are so many potential contributing factors, right, that could make you be feeling that way. But I do think that there is a way to kind of lessen it, and I think a lot of it might honestly be like doing that want kind of quadrant analysis before you even get started in a journal, right? Like we talked about it from a standpoint of it not working for you now because of your slump, but you can also utilize the tools like that before you even start in a new journal. So taking the time to say, okay, what do I want from this journal? Like I have these feelings on those different pieces, what do I need from this? Like those are kind of my two wants and needs are always my favorite, but I find the wants are like this really great blue sky, but the needs really helps me align to like what are the drop dead gotta have them's in this notebook, and kind of really understanding those helps me go out and look for that thing, because when I go into a store or I go into an online shop and I'm just doing a general Google search for something, I can say, okay, I mean, now you could probably put this in the chat GPT or any of the GPTs and be like, hey, I'm looking to start a new journal. I'm looking for these types of, actually, this is a great video for the next year's journal. I'm going to see what it finds for me later on. But this idea of like I'm looking for these things, like I want it to do these things, I need it to do these things, right? And I know you use W as wins, but I think about them as wants. I'm just going to call that out now because I totally abandoned your original. But this idea is just that you are really understanding what you need before you make that decision. You've actually put thought versus impulse into it, and that way you can go into it feeling a lot more comfortable and maybe confident than you would just being, going into a stationery shop and pulling the pretty one off of the shelf, right? If you can pull the pretty one off the shelf and it also happens to have all the things you need, that's a total win. We love that. And I think that's really kind of what is the first kind of excitement about a new journal, and what gets you pumped up about it a lot of the times are those features. And then as you get into that journal, just being mindful of kind of those core pieces to you, right? I need it to be able to help me track my week to week. I need it to be able to help me track my projects and, assure that I get things done on time because they're not getting done now. My little calendar ticklers aren't tickling. So I need to write it down instead. Right.
So
But
creepy.
I know that's why I keep using it, because it is really creepy. But this idea that like you're really using it for what you need to, and then always just kind of checking in with yourself. I really do, though, I don't want to completely abandon what you were just talking about. I love that idea of just like a quarterly planner and being able to like have almost a built-in safety switch or exit, like emergency exit if you need it. I really like that idea, but you're absolutely right. There are not many journals now that don't have an entire year inside of them, even in blank pages now, which years ago I was dying for with Arch and Olive. I was like, I need more pages to get me through a whole year. But now I'm like, what if it didn't have as many and it just kind of ended around that quarter? It's a good idea.
Yeah, I've been very tempted to try out their what everyday deluxe system or whatever, because the little inserts that they have do have fewer pages, and it's very intriguing to me. I haven't bit the bullet, haven't actually started using it, but I was tempted. But I do also find that, in leaning into novelty and things that are new and something that is at least having its moment. It's not actually new. We already talked about how it's not actually new, but junk journaling is having a moment. Memory keeping and such through junk journaling is also having a moment. So all of the excess space that I have in the back of my planner, that's just going to be dedicated to that. So it's kind of nice in that I know that the space is still going to be used. The notebook will still be used in full, or to an extent that I'm kind of happy to call it full. There might be some blank space in there, shock horror, but it's not so much that it's like, wow, you like quote wasted half a notebook. But having that kind of like 3 month system of being like, oh yeah, okay, we set it up, we like do all the plans, get all the goals done, yada yada, work on the stuff, and then having that kind of natural built-in reset is really nice. And previously I had it so it was every 6 months, and that was really good too. I think that even just having a 6 month system can give you that natural built-in reset around the periods that feel like not necessarily milestone moments outside of the new year, which kind of does feel like a milestone moment because it's, pretty universally recognized for a decent chunk of people that it's like, oh yeah, new year, new me energy kind of a thing. It's not to say that it's true, but like, we're all there celebrating or whatnot, wahoo. But having that at those 2 points in the year to kind of like give you those like big rocks, those are the points where you're like transitioning from one half to the next and such. That can just be a nice opportunity to change things up, to lean into novelty, to adjust in such a way that it's going to work as best for you as possible. And kind of like I said, you can use the want analysis for a slump. I use it for a new planner. I use it for a new month. I use it for like a new like journal lineup or whatnot, because the categories are really broad. I know that you call W, like you're going to call it as wants. I just think of it as anything that I like, anything that's working. So that's why it's W for wins. But you can still, break it down in that way, use that information to figure out a new journal or a new monthly setup or just a new collection or layout or like version of something. If you're going into it though, not having like, had a notebook before or had a planner before or whatnot, that doesn't mean you can't do it. It's just, maybe a little bit more difficult to figure out what is a win or what works for you if you haven't had that kind of like prior experience with something, I guess. Not impossible, just a little bit different, a little bit trickier.
Yeah, no, I hear you on that 100%. Well, Planner Pals, we would love to hear from you on this topic. I mean, we could be kind of broad about this one too. If you're in a current planner slump, you can certainly share kind of what's gotten you there. And if you have gotten yourself out of them, I know the Planner Pals, us included, love good tips and tricks in the comment section. So definitely let us know. You can drop a comment in this video if you'd like. Of course, you can always hit us up on our email, plannerpalspodcast@gmail.com, or over on Instagram at Planner Pals Podcast. We would love to hear from you.
Definitely would, because I feel like slump energy, it's always lurking, right? We all fall victim to it. So having not only the tips we've shared today, but also all of the ones that you have available to you to share, we would love to be able to read over those and share them with the community. But as always, thanks for watching.